What's going on, everyone? I'm just a typical, average American here today to react and learn about the difference between British housing and American housing. I actually, truthfully, never in my whatever American ignorance once considered that the kinds of houses or housing available in America would be substantially different or really different at all to the housing in Britain. But I found this little video where these two Brits are gonna explain some of the differences between the housing in Britain that I had no idea even was a thing. In America, I mean, this is a house. This right here, this is normal. I never really considered that it would be much different in another country, especially in the UK, where I still like to believe, despite all the weird differences I've learned about, that something like a house is a house. I'm no real estate mogul or something like that. I don't know all the specific fancy dancy types of living spaces and bungalows and suites that people might live in, but I have to admit, I think I thought a house in America is probably pretty darn similar to the standard house in Britain. And, you have houses like this in America everywhere. You got your lawn, your driveway. They get a little fancier, something like this, sort of a big house, big old front lawn. But that's about it, unless you're living in an apartment building or something. So I'm actually very, very curious what kinds of other housing is available in Britain that I honestly have no clue what it could be, which is exciting, to be quite frank. And without any further ado, let's take a look.
Realise that other people might not actually know what kind of homes are available to people in the UK.
I think the reason it occurred to us is because when you go abroad on holiday, everyone has different houses in the countries that they live in. I've never seen.
Oh, there's the problem. There's the issue. If you're worldly, if you're going abroad a lot, this is something you see, huh? So as somebody like most Americans, honestly, who don't travel outside of the country, very rarely in our lifetimes, we aren't exposed to the possibilities and the actual sites of other styles of housing. So to Brits who I know travel internationally much more, especially around Europe, I would imagine, compared to Americans who are just kind of stuck in America, and that's all we see. Okay, a little self-enlightenment going on here. It's starting to make sense.
Seen a terraced house in Spain.
What is this?
In the countries that they live in. I've never seen a terraced house in Spain.
A terraced house? I'm not sure what a terraced house means. I hope they explain that. I'm not gonna look it up right now. I'm actually hoping they explain what that is.
I've just never seen that.
I don't think I've seen a terraced house in a Mediterranean country.
No, and I certainly haven't when I went to Florida. It was literally just detached houses and apartment blocks. But
detached? I'm not even exactly sure what a detached house means. Apartments, yes. So they've been to America, they've seen it. I think they're just talking about a normal sort of generic American house.
Let's start
from the beginning.
Yeah.
Okay.
So a house that you probably are most familiar with is a detached house.
Okay.
Which is basically just a house on its own.
Yeah, it's building in its own right.
It looks a little bit like this.
Ah, there we go. Okay, there we go. So this is a detached house. That was what I was trying to say without knowing the proper verbiage of what you call it. Detached houses. That's that's the default in America, for sure. So there's a whole, this is the literal first example, and the rest of the video is other stuff. And this is really the only thing I know. So now I'm very curious what other kinds of housing there are, because this is really the only one I'm familiar with.
Detached house. Detached houses feel to me like quite rare in London. I don't really see many detached houses unless I go out into a suburb of London.
Yeah. Sure. Well, that doesn't blow my mind terribly much. If you're in a big city, yeah, I think it's quite common, even in America, you're not going to have your own house, standalone building in a major, super expensive city. Even in America, in New York City or Los Angeles, that would be kind of unheard of or cost $10 million or what it would. So that actually I can kind of relate to.
Yeah, which is the opposite of where, well, I'm assuming where we both grew up. It certainly was where I was from. It mainly is detached houses.
Right.
Mainly in my area, it's detached or semi.
Okay. The next.
Semi. I'm not even sure what semi-detached is. I really hope they go over all this stuff. So they're saying kind of what I was thinking. I would think in many, many, many parts of the UK, if you're not in a city, you're gonna likely have a detached house, or there's gonna be lots of those, kind of like America. But there's still all these other examples yet to come, so I won't hold my breath.
This one is semi-detached, and semi-detached is when two houses are attached together. So it's basically one building, but with a wall right down the middle, so it's two houses in one.
Oh. Why would one do this? To save space? Because it's probably cheaper? I think I have heard of this like on reality TV. Like I have seen something like a semi-detached, I don't know what I'm talking about. Semi-detached house. You share a wall. Well, as long as your neighbor's not like practicing their drums like on that wall, it's probably like a nice situation as long as no one's like rock climbing on it. So maybe this is just like a slightly cheaper, space-friendly alternative to a fully detached house.
In the same area as a detached house, as in the same area of the country, a semi-detached house might be a little bit cheaper to buy.
A bit cheaper. Is this a common occurrence in the UK? The semi-detached house sharing a wall? Because in several of the states I've lived in, grown up in the United States, I don't think I've really ever ran into a semi-detached house. I'm sure they exist in America, but definitely not common.
Yeah.
But that doesn't necessarily mean that it's smaller. In fact, I've been into some semi-detached houses that are massive on the inside.
Definitely. And in London, that certainly wouldn't really affect the price. It would affect it a little bit, but you can still get like multi-million-pound houses that are semi-detached.
Wow, something I need to remember is just space in America is much more abundant. Yeah, our population is much, much, much bigger than the UK. But we have so much more space. I think that's why it's kind of rare to see the semi-detached houses. We just have a bunch of detached houses out here because we got all the space in the world. And the UK is a lot smaller. Maybe that explains it a bit.
Moving on, terraced houses.
Terraced houses. I don't know what a terraced house is, but it sounds fancy. Like a terrace. Gosh, is that like a balcony or something, or?
Terraced houses are multiple houses in a row, like semi-detached, but like about 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 plus houses.
Oh, like from the opening of Full House, if anyone has seen that. Like in, gosh, I think these exist in several American cities. I've just never really lived anywhere near something like this. That's what a terraced house is. So these are considered houses, not apartments, and they're all back to back to back to back, sharing the walls. Okay, I understand the concept. I've just never personally experienced it.
I live in an end terrace house, which means that to buy, it's slightly more expensive to live in the end terrace because technically it's semi-detached.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a nice hack. A nice terraced house hack. Get the one on the end. Oh, that's good stuff. Are these common in the UK? I wish they would comment on that. How common are these? Because you will find the semi-detached house and the terraced house if I'm remembering these correctly. You'll find these in America, no problem, just in cities. Places where space is very limited. But just certainly not common. I would still say that.
In terms of neighbours, you don't have anyone on one side of you, so that's a plus because you won't get noise from next door.
Yeah.
Growing up, I always thought of terraced houses as being more sort of working class communities. That
Okay.
it would be. I think lots of them are Victorian, very old houses, and I think I might not be right here, but I think when they were built for workers. They were built for people who work in coal mines or people who work in a factory.
Right. Some of the old British history coming into play here with the construction, the original construction of some of this housing, this really condensed for workers, very strategic sort of housing.
And the factory builders would build all these terraced houses so that all of their workers could live in the same place.
Right.
But in London, terrace houses again can go for millions of pounds. You can get really lovely, really big terraced houses.
Okay, that makes sense. That's kind of mind-blowing how expensive it seems, like even the worst places. Not that they're bad, but come on, you're attached at the hip to like 20 people. But if you're in the right location, like London, it's gonna be millions of dollars. That doesn't shock me. Although it kind of does.
Or you can get really small ones, but still really lovely.
And sometimes in London, because it's so expensive to live, terrace houses are broken off into flats.
Yeah.
So you
Flats. I have heard the word flat. I'm pretty confident it means the same thing as an apartment. Like Americans just call it an apartment, and Brits call it a flat. So would that be like a single room or a single floor in a terraced house or something like that?
terrace houses are broken off into flats.
Okay.
So you could have, like, for instance, I live in a end terrace house, but I live in a maisonette because I am in the top 2 floors of a house and the bottom floor is a complete different flat.
Oh, so people will like rent out parts of a terraced house and as apartments, technically, sorry, flats, excuse me. I'm kind of getting it. Seems like when you're in London, there's like a lot of different ways they accommodate the limited space.
Yeah.
So
that's called a maisonette.
Maisonette. I've never heard of a maisonette. Okay, that's like part of a house.
Clap the bloody maisonette down. That's a
oh my god,
flashback.
That's a throwback.
Throwback.
Flashback and a throwback.
So a maisonette the definition is if it has stairs within the property.
So yeah, if
Oh my gosh, I have no idea if this is a UK thing or an American thing. We're just getting into terms I've never heard before. Feels very British to me. Maisonette, terraced housing. We probably have terraced housing. I don't know if it's called that or not.
a property is over 2 floors,
Yeah.
it's a maisonette, and if it's a flat, it's just over 1 floor. So many different ways of living.
So many different
So
ways.
many
of living.
different
We're
ways.
so lucky. An apartment, if someone says they live in an apartment and they say that and they live in the UK, we would assume that it would be a very nice, high-end, lovely, spacious, modern.
Oh man, I didn't know this. Oh man.
It would be.
I didn't know. I thought a flat was an apartment. But apartment is its own term in Britain. This is like a science. Like this is I'm trying to break this down. I need to get out the notepad and like draw some diagrams here. An apartment means something in the UK. I didn't know that. Thought it was a flat. It's super luxurious. There's an association with the word that it's fancy. No, in America, you can have the worst, terrible, crappy apartment. It doesn't mean that it's nice just because it's an apartment. Quite the contrary. I think most people assume it's kind of not that great.
Be a very nice, high-end, lovely, spacious, modern place
Okay.
to live.
Yes.
Okay.
Whereas if you say a flat, it can mean that. It absolutely can. But your instant thought would be like maybe it's in like a tower block, maybe it's not as modern.
Oh. Oh, so flat has an association with it as well. Oh man. See, this is the level of detail, the level of nuance that you just can't really get as an American. You're really like, there was no other way I was ever gonna know that detail of flat and versus apartment without like a Brit literally explaining it. That's part of the reason I love videos like this.
As an apartment. And quite often big blocks of flats are part of a council estate.
A council flat
Huh?
is a
Council estate. Man, do most people in the UK know? Are you familiar with all these different words? Like, as someone like me, particularly an American who's not really into the different types of real estate or rentables, I've never heard almost all these words I've never heard, besides apartment. I didn't even know that the thing I was trying to say at the beginning was a detached house. Do most people in the UK know all these terms?
Are part of a council estate.
A council flat is a flat which is owned by the government and is rented to you by the council. So,
Council flat. Council estate sounds quite fancy. And it's rented by the government? Interesting.
Often for a reduced price.
yes. So rather than your rent money going to a private landlord, you're paying the state money, like Joel said, at a slightly reduced price.
Yeah. And some of them are even rented.
Slightly reduced priced. Rented by the state. I don't think there's any equivalent to that in America that I know of. Is this like specifically rented at a low cost to people with financial difficulties, or like as a public service? Or am I completely off the mark here?
Free of charge. They're houses that are given away as benefit to people that can't afford rent. So people want them.
Oh, there you go. I think this is like a social service type of thing. That's kind of nice.
Might be unemployed or can't work for some reason. The council have these, or the government have these places where they can be like, okay, well, I'm going to give you this flat for free.
Yeah.
Or it might be, we've reduced the rent because you can afford £200 a month. So
Wow, that's fantastic, actually. I didn't know we were talking about some kind of social welfare program. We need more of these in America, desperately. Like, there's really, really, really horrible homelessness issues in some of the cities in America in particular. And some of these government-sponsored living based on your income, that sounds fantastic.
we'll pay the rest, but you pay £200 a month.
Exactly. Not many houses, especially in London, have a garden. It's actually quite nice if someone goes, come over to my house, we've got a garden.
Oh.
That shouldn't be unusual to hear because you're like, oh wow, you have a garden.
Yeah.
Because so many of us live in flats or in high-rise buildings, so...
That's, okay. Yeah, that's kind of, for me, that's a little funny. Just thinking about, like, there are people out there who are, like, starved for just a glimpse of a leaf or something. But when you live in a big city, I can absolutely see where that would happen, like London.
And you might have a balcony, but you don't
no
have
garden.
a garden.
Okay.
So guys, we've just sort of spoken a little bit about the types of homes we have in the UK and what's available to live in.
Yeah.
Right.
We hope that was helpful, because
It was helpful, yet somehow I am walking away a little confused. I think just because of the sheer amount of information, I think I'm just a little surprised still at how much stuff there is to know about this. Like all these different places, all these different styles of housing that I haven't heard of.
because I think it isn't, like we've said, it's a really obvious topic for us because we are used to it. But I think for lots of you guys not from the UK,
Yeah.
I hope you'll find it interesting. I don't feel like you've got the same types of property, not exactly the same.
No. And to me, it seems like not nearly as common. Maybe that's why I just haven't really been exposed to much of any of this. Like I was saying at the beginning, in 99% of America, you're going to see houses like this everywhere. If you got some money, maybe like this, like a big old house. But I am really wasn't familiar with detached house. Yes, terraced houses. Okay, sure. In some American cities, I can see that. Flats versus apartments versus council flats. That's all new to me.
In your country.
So yeah, let us know in the comments any thoughts you have about English homes.
Are you okay?
I'm dying.
You're dying. Don't forget to click
I need a
subscribe.
drink. I can't.
We post videos every week. I'm going to get her a bit of a drink.
I just choked on
Okay.
something.
Saliva.
Okay, that's me after learning about all these different things. By the way, this video's by Those Two Brits, and I liked it. I gotta give it a like for sure. That was very good. Nice sort of introduction to all this stuff. I think what I ended up, the last bit kind of got to me, that there's a difference between apartments and flats. Whereas I was confident, I kind of knew what that all meant. Now I just know that I don't know. That's kind of the thing. But either way, this was super fun and fascinating. British housing is much more different to American housing, although I will say this seemed to me like maybe British housing in cities or busy towns or really populated areas where it would necessitate the need for housing to be attached, share walls, and live in more apartments and flats, which in many parts of America is not necessary, which is a real nice perk, I think, of living in such a gigantic country. If we don't get to leave this place and actually vacation the rest of the world, at least we got lots of space for our houses. Is that a thing? Maybe that's a nice thing, but honestly, like they were saying, some of the attached stuff, the attached housing, the shared housing with the walls, are pretty darn nice as well. It'd be cool to see the inside of some of these, but for now, I enjoyed this. Anyway, if you enjoyed this as well, feel free to give this video a like or leave a comment. And if you're interested in more videos like this, me reacting to the UK culture, stuff in the UK that I've never seen or learned about before, feel free to subscribe for more. And until then, thanks for watching, and see you next time.